What is a third space and why do you need one? Let's discuss. Welcome to Princess and Scoundrel, where we take you along our scrappily ever after, from Fantasyland to Tatooine and everything in between. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Steven.
And we are talking about maybe a phrase that you've heard before. It's fairly new to us.
I wouldn't say it's new. It's a concept that I've heard of before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Technically, it's kind of what Epcot was kind of made from.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah, I guess so.
The idea of Epcot was this whole, you live and work in the same area.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay.
So, and there's live, work, play.
Live, work, play.
But you could explain it a little bit more.
So let's dive into exactly what a third space is and how we got involved with it, aware of it, I guess, if you will.
I think just brought it to light, reminded us.
As with anything, it's TikToks and Reels, to be fair. We started seeing we're so ingrained in the Disney social media world that we started seeing a lot of things coming up about third spaces and how the Disney parks are a third space for people. And it was like, what is a third space? And it started getting really popular really fast. And as a travel agent, really my job is to help create third spaces for people. And you and I kept sending them back and forth to each other, and we're like, I think we need to really dig into this, because there is a psychology around third space and a reasoning as to why people need it, that it's one of those things that I think you just inherently kind of know or get without being conscious of it. And so we're bringing it to the forefront. We're talking about third spaces, and we're digging into what it is, why it's important, what it is now, because I think that is a huge thing. What it used to be and what it is now are two very different things.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for this conversation, really excited for it. Okay. So what was third space?
So from what we kind of understood, this is, I think back in the 70s, is a while ago when the suburbs were created, people would move out to the suburbs, and this is where their home is. So this is where you do your primary living, chores, family, and all that.
Right.
Then you would commute into town to the big city, and that would be your work.
Yep.
These third spaces were kind of the areas that people would have social moments. It was like a bar or
a movie theater,
just these other things, and they were points of almost like a break from home and home chores, work, obligations. This is a way for them to just kind of be free of that.
Yeah. You have responsibilities that you have to do at work, and you have responsibilities at home, and they can be stresses. So a third space is a space that you can go to, a bookstore, a coffee shop, even the barber shop, where you can just go, or getting your nails done. You can go and relax. You can socialize with other people, and you feel like you can escape a bit. So that's what a third space technically on paper started out as. Even a park, right? Just anywhere that you can go and just be with other people and not be with work people or necessarily just your family.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a break.
And it was like that for a long time, right? We've seen third spaces evolve. We've seen new third spaces come up. We've seen escape rooms and all these other things. But
the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think the crazy thing, kind of a little side tangent,
okay,
about the pandemic is it is such a huge impact on this generation's lives that it is a point that it's a point of reference now.
It is.
Because of that, so many things have there was the time before, and now there's the time. It was the ice age, when the meteors hit the earth type of thing. It's such a impactful moment, and it changed things drastically everywhere.
And we laugh about it. You're the pandemic, and I'm laughing over here. I'm haha, the pandemic, the shutdown. But it was, we laugh off our pain, but it was a huge shift
Yeah,
in
yeah.
like everything. So when the pandemic happened, you know, the first 2 weeks that we were all going to be at home to flatten the curve.
Everybody loved it. It was like, oh, 2 weeks off.
Yeah,
Great.
I don't have to wear hard pants. I can just sit at home and work. But it crashed everything into one space. So you didn't have a workspace and you didn't have a home space and you didn't have a third space. You had one place that you had to manage all of these things.
And it was like you had to, everything was
you
shut
couldn't
down.
leave.
You didn't go into the office. You couldn't go do any of these social things.
You couldn't go out to eat even.
Yeah.
You couldn't do, and like truly everything was shut down. You were forced to be in your home. They didn't even want you leaving your home in some instances. And so we were all forced to adapt and do all of the things our entire lives in one place. We're fortunate that we have a home. Some people have apartments. Some people are sharing apartments.
Yeah.
Some people don't even have that. Like,
and I mean, I think that was just a mental hurdle on itself, because you, even with, you know, family that you chose, you get cooped up for quite some time. There's sometimes that built up, and you need a break. You need to be away from, you know, you get tired of people.
yeah, it was,
and you get short fused, and like there's just, you need that break.
you do. And I'll share a story of like, it is so clear in my mind. Like, it was a traumatic day, and it happened to be our daughter's first birthday. So when the pandemic started, our daughter was under a year old. And so I'm having to navigate like motherhood with an infant and all of these things. And you were considered an essential worker. So, and the daycares were closed. So everything is in one space. And I am having to work from home. We had like a critical like launch that we were doing at work. And so I remember on her birthday, I'm spending the entire day doing this really intense testing, like on calls with people. And it's like, okay, I clicked my button. The file should be triggered. Do you see it on your end? Okay, now do this and then send it back. And I'm doing that. I've got both of our kids at home that are really, really young at the time. And it's our daughter's birthday. I'm trying to make a cake. We had to have a virtual birthday party for her that day. You're essential. And so you were going into work, and I'm like alone with them, trying to work, trying to be a good
And that's
mom.
when I was working evening shifts. So it was like pretty much the bulk of, you know, the waking hours.
Yeah. And it was, I remember like I lost it. Like you left we had the little virtual birthday party, because I think you like, I want to say you like came home on your lunch break to like, okay, really quick, I've got like 15 minutes. We had a little virtual birthday party, and then you left. And I remember nothing was going right. Like everything was so much that I had a mental breakdown on the kitchen floor. And I was like, I cannot do this anymore. Like, this is too much. Like, we were not meant to do all of these things in one space, because you couldn't even get a break then.
Yeah. And I think that was the thing, is even if it was a separation of work and home, there's that separation of like, okay, I could cut myself off, and this is work time, this is home time. And then, you know, the leisure time, it's a separate time. You know, I'm going to do these other things. But at that time, there was no separating it. Like, there had to be this evolution of trying to get this relaxation. And that kind of led into me starting to stream. Like, that was an outlet for me, because again, I was
sick of us.
I was able to separate from you guys, from the stresses of home, and I was able to let my creativity kind of out.
Yeah.
And
you needed an outlet.
Yeah, and needing that outlet.
Yeah.
And so, you know, starting to stream, starting to connect with people online, and that kind of became, I think, for everybody, like, just these online communities became a third space. Like, it was a way to kind of not talk to work people, not talk to home people, but just other people that you could connect with.
Right. And I mean, streaming and online communities and YouTube videos, like, those all existed well before the shutdown. But during the shutdown, they really blossomed and thrived because people were just like craving
that was just
social interaction.
Exact. That was the thing. It was like, that was the only way to interact with people.
Right.
And so it became vital in, like, I think during that time.
that you started streaming at that time. And then I think around that time too, that was kind of like the first iteration of this podcast was you streaming. I became a travel agent once things started opening up because couldn't book travel if everywhere was closed. But we also moved into this culture, like a hustle culture,
Yeah.
where everybody was like, well, if I'm home all the time and I do have this maybe I have this extra time, what else can I do? And for some people it was a necessity to do second jobs.
And I think that's the thing. There was part of it you wanted to, that idle hands type of thing. Like you had to be doing something. Like, okay, I'm home, but I can't just sit here and just, twiddle my thumbs.
Right.
I'm going to do something else. And again, your creativity, like you start, taking that marketing degree and let me figure things out and doing something else. And other people did the same thing. They 3D printed, they did, all these different things to kind of like get that release out.
Yeah.
But this is kind of leading into coming out of the pandemic. People were needing 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Like the things cost a lot.
Things cost a lot, and then people's jobs were eliminated with the pandemic. If they're like, oh, if we could do the remote work from home, we could do that remote work from anywhere in the world. And everything changed with the pandemic. And we've done it, but like you said, we're no different than anybody else. Yeah. There are so many new ventures that started up as a result of the shutdown.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's the thing is because everybody adapted to having work, home, and play. I feel like that play kind of took a back seat to it all, but everybody was work and home that they couldn't figure out how to get that back separated when we started to, we started to open back up.
Right. Yeah. We can't say it's over.
Yeah. But I mean, but things started to kind of come back to normal.
Yeah. Like people now, a lot more people are working outside the home. There is still like remote work and hybrid working, but for the most part, people are back to how things were beforehand. All of the vacation destinations, the theme parks, the, cruising, all inclusive resorts, like everything is back open. But with going back to the office, you have to relearn how to be social physically again too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the term social battery has been used as much as it has, like, since we've all been returning back to being in the same place with our coworkers. Because I remember I was like, I had to go to a happy hour thing last week, and I was like, my social like, I'm done. I'm so done for the day. I am drained.
Well, but I think the thing is, and this is again, it's a hard thing to describe because it's like it's art, right? You can't. How do you explain it? How do you find value in it? And I think during the pandemic, people started valuing themselves and their time more.
Yeah.
So when you're going out, like I want to have a good time, I want to relax or whatever. Is it worth my time? Is it worth my money?
Right.
I could be over here working, or I could be spending money.
Yeah.
Or, as far as socializing, hey, I'm here to work. I'm not here to talk to you because I have to
make friends.
Yeah, I'm not, we're an episode of Survivor. But the thing is like, I could go to work and work. I'm not here to have fun with you because it would feel like fake communicating. Like, yes, you have that work friend, but it's not the same. Like, we don't have the same interest. We are just like surviving together.
Yeah.
We both, hate this part of the job, so we could complain about it. Like, that's what it would be.
Yeah.
Like, you're just trauma bonding. And then as far as the value, again, I could spend all day, after hours, happy hours, hanging out with you, or I could come back home and come talk to people that I actually, get along with, have a great time with. And I think that was the turning point for a lot of people. Is like, I need to, like, I'm using my time wisely. That is the most finite thing that we have is time. So let's figure out how to use it wisely.
Right. No, I think that's great. Like, we have to be time wise when it comes to where we're finding our fun.
Yeah.
Before, I feel like we were a lot more like mindless. Like, well, I could just sit here and binge watch a show. And now it's like, no, I need to I want to hang out
and I think the thing
fulfilled.
Is, yeah, I think that still happens. I'm guilty of it. Like, I'm gonna chime in there. Like, I'm so guilty of just like wasting time. But then in my head, I feel like I'm wasting time.
Yeah.
And I think because I could quote unquote multitask. And I think that was one of the things that, it kind of reminds me of is like movie theaters. Like after the pandemic, people are not going to the movies the way they used to.
Well, and one of the reasons for that is like during the pandemic, everybody had to adjust. Even the big movie companies had to, what is it called? A production company? There you go. Like a production company. They had to adjust. And so they had to start releasing movies that were meant to go in the theaters on their streaming services. Like we saw that with Disney Plus. We saw it with Paramount, with Peacock, with all of these like streaming services that have come in the recent years. They were having to make adjustments as well. And so it was like you could pay an extra $30 and you could watch Onward this date, or you could wait a month and you could watch it for free. Yeah. And it was like, okay, now that leash of like how long we have to wait before we can just get that for free with what we're already paying for on a streaming service got a lot shorter.
Well, I think, but again, it's a value of, even when things were opening up, I was kind of leaning towards, I would rather pay for it to get on a streaming service than to have to go out to a movie theater where it could possibly be loud, sound could be off, it not start on time. I could, I had more control over the situation. Right. And it's like, again, that's where it goes back to that perceived value. Like, yeah, I may pay a couple extra bucks, but I'm not spending $40 on some popcorn. Right. I could make the, popcorn here at the house. Well, if I want some candy, I don't have to sneak it in to eat some candy.
We don't do that.
But again, it's that perceived value. So it's like, yeah, I may be paying a little bit more for the quote unquote movie, but my entire experience is more of a value to me.
It's more value. And then also I got to talk during the movies when we watched them at home. And it was a big adjustment when we started going back to the movies. It's like, oh wait, I have to be quiet. But and the babysitting too. Yeah. Like the more you could do in your home, the less you needed to pay somebody else to watch your kids if you were trying to do that. So it was just this like weird time. But all of the entertainment and these traditional third spaces had to plus up and do more in order to draw people back in. Yeah. So, I mean, Topgolf has been around for a while, but Topgolf is like, it's a putting green, it's a bar, it's a restaurant, it's a place to go hang out. And so you're seeing more of those types of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking like a barcade. Like, yeah, there's a bar. People, there's kind of an appeal to a bar, but now there's a bar arcade. Right. Like they have to combine it with something because it's not just good enough to go have drinks. Like, hey, I need a little bit more value. Like if I'm going to be sitting here drinking, then, and again, the other part of it is like the business side of it. You could go and like, okay, I'm just going to go have one drink and then, head out. Yeah. Whereas like the business wants you to be able to stay there for a little while, so their profit is marketable, right. know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we had virtual happy hours like at home all the time. They have to get you out there doing something else, something that you can't do at home. And I think that's what's important now is that third spaces, especially like local traditional third spaces, people need to feel like they can get something out of that they can't get at home, because we learned how to make sourdough bread and coffee and all kinds of stuff at home. So now it's like, what do you got for me? Because I can do most of these things if I really need to. Like we've survived.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things that for us coming out of the pandemic, we talk about it a lot, Star Cruiser.
What is that?
But for us, it evolved how we want to experience things.
Yeah, right? Hugely. Because a traditional third, think about a bar. Think about going to a hotel or think about going to the theme parks. Think about going to an escape room or a dinner party. Star Cruiser was all of those things in one. Yeah. Did it have a high price point? Absolutely it did. But I'm not a Sith, I'm not going to deal in absolutes, but there was rarely a person that I could find that experienced Star Cruiser that said that it was not worth every dollar that they paid and that they would even pay more to do it again. Yeah. Like the value, the perceived value that they got out of it. And I think that's what's important is is when you're talking about third spaces, it's about your perceived value. Because
yeah, and I think that's the line is perceived value, because
right,
you may be paying more for something, but if you say, I'm gonna pay for this because I want a better experience. Like, yeah, I could pay half the price, but I'm gonna have a mediocre experience. But then there's gonna be just that thing inside of you where like I really wish I would have gotten this. Really wish I would have, that regret in whatever your experience is. You're like I really wish I would have done that.
right.
Whereas like if you would have just done it, you would have enjoyed yourself and been happy
And I think people nowadays are like, I'm just going for the full experience because I don't have the time to like waste on a mediocre experience and then try to do a full experience. So they're going full bore. But like with Star Cruiser, you could put value against some of the things that you experienced, right? Like the hotel stay, the food, the park ticket, the lightning lane, like all of these things. But you could not put a price on the story, the character interactions, sometimes the like emotional impacts that it had. I'm going to say sometimes, most of the times, the emotional impacts that it had on people that went. And that's what was important. And I think that's what's shifting now in third spaces, is that when people are spending money on experiences, on third spaces, spending time and money, right? Because we're very limited on time now. They want something that is going to fulfill relaxing, getting away from the struggles or the stresses of home and work. They want socialization. They want to be around people that also feel the same way that they feel and can relate to them, because we missed that during the shutdown. And then they want to have value out of the time and the money that they're spending on this experience. And Star Cruiser nailed every single one of those.
Yeah.
So now, well, we can't have Star Cruiser anymore.
They took it away.
They took it away. And so now we're stuck with, where do we go from there? What we need third spaces. They're so important.
So like one of the things that, when we began to have thinking of ideas for this conversation,
right?
We kind of had a bit of a tiff, kind of like a disagreement. And in the sense, you were kind of thinking and you were kind of in the mindset that the third space is a physical place. Like it's a separation of these other two things.
A Disney World.
Which is what it was.
Right.
And that my argument was, because of the pandemic, it became something that it didn't have to be physical. Because, a perfect example I was giving you, and I was just kind of like one after another, but I became friends with people online that I played video games with. Yeah. Then we would talk on Discord and have, our kind of close connections. But then I would get messages, hey, we're hopping on. So we would play video games, but then other times it's just us chatting, just us talking to each other.
Yeah.
And that was a way for, I could tell you, hey, I'm going to hop on and, give me a couple hours and I'm going to hang out with my friends.
Yeah.
And so we'd have our good laughs, and it was a release. And there's that group of friends. And I think that's the same thing coming out of it, what Star Cruiser kind of evolved into, because yes, it was a physical place and it did all these different things, but now that it was taken away, there's still this community, and people still are able to reminisce, lament, and talk, learn new things about the experience. And you don't have to go out to or try to find somebody that's the same as you. There's groups for it. And it's led into, like our cruise coming up, to a con coming up, but and meetups, at other cons. Like it's that community that's not anywhere physical. It's something that's just a connection now.
But I think that's where it's hard to really define what a third space is, especially in 2024, because I think that there may be layers or levels to third spaces. Because to you, an introvert, a virtual third space is perfectly fine. Like you're like, I just need to go like hang out on my computer for a couple hours, hang out with some friends online, and I'm good. But for me, an extrovert who loves to travel, to me, a third space is going somewhere and truly breaking from like, I am nowhere near a washing machine that I know how to operate right now. Like I am great. Like my work laptop is back in another state. Like, it is a true physical break for me. But Star Cruiser was a physical third space. And had we not had that third space, I don't think that the online third space that we have in the community would be as strong as it is. So I feel like you can have these virtual third spaces, but you need these physical trips or events or things to do to bring those people together. Because, like, let's break for a second and talk about Mosh Isley. Mosh Isley was just meant to be a one-time after party, a quick let's hang out and meet up. And the timing happened to be right as the people were going out again and traveling again after the shutdown. And what happened, and it was nothing that we planned, was this community was born because all of these people got to experience something in one place at one time. And as a result of that, this community has been born. And now we have Mosh Isley events every, a couple, 2, 3, 4 times a year. And I think you need both.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm like, I'm scratching myself because I'm like, I need to say something. But I think that's what it was. It evolved. It is not just a physical, like, we need more value from it.
Yeah.
I could go to a concert and it could be meaningful, but it's not going to be as impactful as going to a concert with people that I'm friendly with.
Yeah.
Right? Like, going to a concert with 100, 400, 500 of my friends is way more perceived value for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is like, Star Cruiser was great, but us going with our group of friends made it that much greater.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing, is like, it's 2 parts now. It's not just there has to be more. That it's not just like you doing it by yourself and getting
now,
that.
Everybody has to get matching tattoos.
Yeah.
That's the Star Cruiser way. But seriously, let's talk about this just in, like, our own, like, you and me.
Okay.
Last year we went on a cruise, our very first cruise, on the Disney Wish. We went on a 3-night sailing on the Disney Wish. Did we have a good time?
It was, I think the thing is I didn't have a bad time.
But we didn't have a great time. And we did a deep dive. We did a whole episode about it after the fact. The ship, beautiful. The entertainment, amazing. The food, delicious. Everything about the cruise was great, except for us. We ruined our cruise for ourselves because we were sitting around and we're like, there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
You know what there was to do? Relax. And we don't know how to do that. And that was great. It was a third space that we went to and we visited, and we had a good time. I'm gonna say we had a good time. But at the day that this comes out, we are embarking this weekend on that exact same sailing, a 3-night Wish sailing aboard the Disney Wish with 200 of our closest Star Cruiser friends. And I cannot tell, like, it hasn't happened yet. It is going to be the best time in comparison to that first cruise. We are going to have so much fun.
Yeah, no, I'm more excited for this one because, again, I feel like, not that I have to do anything, but I feel more value. I feel more opportunities to be able to just hang out with people, and I feel like my own, like, my shell, will be off. Like, I would be able to kind of, like, communicate with people. I won't feel like I'm in a weird place. Like, I'll know people.
Yeah. And I think that's what the difference is you can go on trips, and maybe you love going on trips by yourself, and that's where you get that relaxation. Maybe you don't need socialization and you get the value out of it. But for us, you say you're an introvert, but we're very social introverts. We get the relaxation of getting to be away. We physically from our home and our work. We get to socialize with a bunch of like-minded people and people that we chose, right? I think that's the big difference. And then we get that perceived value out of the experience because we're getting to do things together. And most of the trips that we've taken over the last year and a half have been trips like this where we're going with people that we know. It's either going to a convention for Mosh Isley, or it's going on Star Cruiser trips with our friends. We've got this cruise coming up, or sometimes we're just like let's go do Life Day in Disneyland.
Yeah.
And it's just something that we heard about that's cool. Let's go do that. And whoever wants to go, let's go.
Yeah. And I think the hard thing right now too is there's, because we do Disney a lot. And there's just this, I don't know if it's perceived or if it's something that's the narration of it, but that you don't get the value from going to Disney. You don't get what your money's worth from it.
People that don't visit Disney often can feel like it's too expensive.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So like the too expensive, like, that's where I was trying to get you, is to the too expensive, because people talked about it on Star Cruiser, but you mentioned it. Anybody that went was saying yes, and I want to go again.
Yeah.
But whenever someone said it was too expensive, our argument would be, well, what about going to the Super Bowl? That's a one-day experience to see a football game that happened the week before. Happened the week before. People going to Taylor Swift concerts. To me, and this is where it kind of like gets me more, up in arms, is like no one should be shamed for spending money on what they deem as entertainment value, like, because this is stuff for their mental health, because it just makes you happy. Like, let me spend my money how I want to spend it.
Say that again. I think that is that statement alone is so powerful. Nobody should be shamed for how they spend their time or their money when it is something that brings them joy.
Yeah.
Like, get off everybody's backs. Like, chill out, guys.
Yeah.
Like, if I want to go spend my money on something you think is dumb, I really don't care. Like, I love this thing. Let me go be happy and do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the downside of the internet, is that everybody can share their opinion too. But Disney is expensive, right? It's just, you can't get around that. Like, it is expensive, but it is something that if you really enjoy it, if you really enjoy the Super Bowl, if you really enjoy Taylor Swift, you're going to figure out a way to go do those things.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Because it brings you joy.
And I think this harkens back to our very first Disney trip as a family. So I think I've talked about it before on the podcast, but our first trip to Disney was a month after my dad died. And my dad hung the moon. Like, I was in a very deep depression when we went. We almost canceled the trip. Like, it was a whole thing because we were supposed to be going to Star Wars Celebration. We decided to go to Disney. And I was really down at the time, but we pushed and we went. And that was the first time since he had passed that I was able to feel joy in a pure way. It wasn't like we're at a birthday party, so we have to be happy about it. I was able to just like truly, like, you're on a ride and just like that smile comes over you, or you see the fireworks and just like you get this release and this.
Because you were separated from that stress that was there.
I was separated from all of it. Yeah. And just in that moment, I was able to forget that my dad died and like just be happy again. It was like, okay, there's hope. There's hope here. Yeah. And that resonates with a lot of people. There's actually, as you know, I do sell travel. I've booked a lot of trips for people lately who have just lost loved ones, and they're like, we just want to get away.
Yeah.
And so there is a psychological need for a third space, whether you're booking a cruise or whether you're going to Disney World or whether you just need to find an online community.
And I think that's the thing, is like, it's not just Disney. It's separating these other stressors in life to find your place that brings you joy.
Yeah. Like, let's talk about, so we actually both, like, this is actually a perfect time for this conversation because you and I both just got off of solo trips. We went without each other, without our kids. I went with my sister-in-law, but I spent 7 nights on Icon of the Seas on a brand new cruise ship. And yes, I was working in every sense of the word because I was working my day job. I was working my travel agent work. And then I was, gathering research for the podcast that we did on it. But there were times where it was like, okay, I'm not logged into any of these things. You're not there. The kids aren't there. I had like hours to kill. And I'm like, what do I do? And it was the freedom of the thought that nobody needs anything from me right now. It's an important statement, and I want everybody to remember this. Nobody needs anything from me right now. The freedom of that thought is terrifying if you have not had that kind of time before to yourself, which is utterly ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But when you're at home and you have 3 hours to yourself, you're like, well, I could do some laundry. I really need to like wipe down these cabinets. I could do this. When you're in a place where like literally you're cut off, it is freeing. It is terrifying. But I think that also really helps you to connect with yourself and say like, oh, I needed this. Okay, this is really good for me mentally.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna speak from my solo trip. It was something that was way out of my comfort zone because, you know, and I talked about it at length. Because I kind of feel like I'm more of an introvert. I want to control as much as I can, and in that situation, I can't control everything. And there were so many variables that I could have spun myself into an even deeper, just like, oh, I can't do this, or let me go experience this so I don't regret it. And that's kind of what I went with, is I don't want to regret not doing it. I'd rather, you know, get the urge to do it and have a good time. And that's what it ended up being. And it was, like you said, it was stressful because it was so new and different. But coming out of it afterwards, I was so relieved that, and I'm proud of myself. I was like, I did this. I went on my own and I just went with it. You know, did these things, even if it wasn't a grand experience. I had time to just kind of reflect on myself and just kind of enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And I think it was way more appreciated. Like after, like now, I'm like, wow, like I did need that. I needed it more than I thought I did.
I don't even think we touched on where you went and why, but
well, I mean, I think if
we talked about it on the live stream.
Yeah, we talked about it on the live stream. But you know, I had gone to the San Francisco to the Bad Batch premiere, so it was just me because it was like such a short notice type of thing that you know we kind of had to play paper rock scissors and see who watches the who stays home with the kids. And
you're like, well, you were just gone for a week on a cruise, so
I got the leg up there.
But when you went on that. And when I went on Icon, and when we go to Disney or we go do any of these things, and you're hitting on that relaxation, that socialization, that value, being able to completely disconnect like that and just have pure fun without any strings, like pure fun. There's no responsibilities, nothing. It's like you're a kid again. It's like you're reconnecting to your childhood self. And the crux of it is, and the crux of this whole conversation is like, we have forgotten how to truly play. And with third spaces and with the evolution of third spaces, and this is why you need a third space, it's learning to play again.
Yeah.
Without any inhibitions, like any restrictions or responsibilities or anything like that. Like, leave all of that at the door. Leave that pile of laundry that you've been ignoring to fold for days. Leave that at the door and just come show up and just have a good time and connect with people that are like you.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely a way to kind of recharge your own battery in whatever sense it is, like just taking a break. And it's again, I'm kind of going back to my experience, is it gave me a little bit more life. Like, you know, it recharged the batteries and I'm ready for the next thing. And like, it was something that I definitely want to kind of get into more of, like taking that just a full break from like that work and home life. Because I think it's really needed.
It is needed. And not to say that like our home lives and our work lives are absolutely miserable. Like, we have fun here, but it's a different kind of fun just because you're surrounded by all of the things. Yeah. So I am very excited I'm like so jacked on third spaces right now.
But also like you let us know, like, what is your third space? Like, what is something that you enjoy doing your break from what, you know, that home and work?
And it could be local. So this is a good place for us to wrap our portion of this conversation up. But it could be local. It could be a bar that you really love going to, or maybe a barbershop, or maybe a mall. Who knows what it is? Like maybe a local board game meetup. You've got big experiences too. Like there was Star Cruiser, there's Disney, there's cruises, there's all-inclusive resorts. We've got HouseCon coming up. Like there are these big things that you can also do as a third space. So if you have a third space, drop a comment, let us know what is your third space. And if you don't have a third space, if you're struggling for one, put that out there too. Like let's have a conversation about it, because
there's a group, there's somewhere for you.
There is somewhere for you, and we will help you find it too. I'm telling you, I'm so amped on third spaces right now, because it's something that we don't think is necessary, but it is absolutely so necessary for our mental health and our happiness. And so please, let's have this conversation. Reach out to us on YouTube, comments on Instagram, wherever it is that you want to reach out to us, because we love talking about this. But thank you so much for hanging out with us for this conversation.
Until next time.